to be my conclusion. So let's, for a hypothetical, that I'm a citizen in Colorado and a road worker that works for the state who is, being paid by the state, employed by the state, is in, my area they got drunk, they ran off the road, and my grandmother was just, picking wild berries peacefully on the bushes in her summer dress, and they ran over her and they broke both of her legs. She's in the hospital with severe, injuries. So what the fuck? Who the fuck is going to pay for this shit? What can we do? Well, the 11th Amendment, the way that the Supreme Court has interpreted the 11th Amendment, they've interpreted it incorrectly, is that a citizen cannot sue their own state. The 11th Amendment doesn't say that. The 11th Amendment actually says you can sue your own state. It doesn't say, it omits. Okay, so the 11th Amendment says that you cannot sue another state. You can't sue another state, and then another country's citizens can't sue the state either. So the way it is worded, and I'll just actually read it directly, the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. So just a quick overview. You had the Chisholm decision. The Chisholm decision was a guy from South Carolina. He wanted the state of Georgia to pay the debt of, when he was executor of a guy's wills, of a guy's estate. So a guy from South Carolina was owed some money by the state of Georgia, and he went to the federal court in order to get that resolved. The federal court is a perfect place to go to get anything that's, any dispute between the states. So the state of Georgia doesn't show up. And then the Chisholm decision says that, the federal government has a right to take that case. And it was for goods that had been supplied during the American Revolutionary War. So the state of Georgia didn't want to pay their debts. They didn't mind taking the goods and services from that person for the war. But then when it came to pay their bill, the state of Georgia didn't want to do it. And so this whole sovereign immunity thing, Caleb Strong, he's a senator from Massachusetts, he files something immediately to get the 11th Amendment put on to the ratification, and then they do it, and it's within 2-3 years. It's actually crazy how fast, how quick this 11th Amendment. I would love to know the propaganda efforts, because there's no way that a freedom-loving people would have ran and grasped onto the 11th Amendment like it was actually going to do something for them. Ultimately, what the 11th Amendment does is it takes away power from citizens to sue the other states. But because it says that a state cannot be sued by citizens of another state, so I'm in Colorado, so that means the citizens of other states can't sue Colorado. Colorado could piss and shit and put out poison products and shoot missiles off and just attack the other 49 states. None of the citizens can sue Colorado. The state can, and the federal government probably can. They can make up their own rules, right? They're doing it with the 11th Amendment. But the citizens can't. So the citizens, if the state of Colorado injures the Tennessee citizens, Montana citizens, Hawaii citizens, they cannot directly sue the state of Colorado. And so, is that good or bad? I think that's bad. For a citizen, if Tennessee injures me, I want to be able to sue them. And so I don't see why we're actually giving sovereign immunity between the states. It makes sense to me that for citizens or subjects of a foreign state, so the citizens of Australia can't sue the state of Colorado. Now, I could see some, instances when you probably would want a lawsuit if there is, some wrongdoing. But ultimately, what happens in Colorado, this is America, this is Colorado, a nation state, so between these borders and the people in those borders, that's Coloradan Americans. And so for the Coloradan Americans, we have certain rights and freedoms, and I want to keep those rights and freedoms, and I'm not going to extend all those rights and freedoms to every, Tom, Dick, and Harry all across the fucking world. So, this is my rights and freedoms, and, maybe that's being a little American exceptionalism, but it's my fucking homeland, so I feel like it's my home, so this is my, you know, I get the rights and freedoms. We're not going to extend it to, I don't want, you know, the idea of the citizens of Australia. I mean, what if, you know, I put out a video and they didn't like it, so they sue me in their courts because, you know, my opinion hurt their, you know, ears or some shit, and now I got to pay them restitution. So because they filed a fucking, you know, lawsuit in Australia, do they even do shit like us? Do they have the 3 branches of government? Do they have the same kind of court system? So that would be insane. That would be crazy to accept, you know, the lawsuits from private citizens of other countries. That part I'm totally fine with. That's great. If the 11th Amendment would just cut out the part where it says, you know, we can't sue other states, that's ridiculous. But, you know, by citizens and subjects of other foreign states, no, they shouldn't be allowed to sue my state. That doesn't make much sense at all. So the 11th Amendment is a total crock of shit. It's a total crock of shit. Right? So if you just read it, the reason why I say that, it actually, by reading the 11th Amendment, you can tell that they meant for the citizens of America to be able to sue their own individual states because they omitted it. When they were sitting there saying that the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. That only leaves citizens of that person's state. They didn't put it in. It wouldn't have got voted up if they would have put it in. So it was bad politically, but the law specifically does not mention it. It specifically omits it. So the power that was taken away from the judicial branch was other citizens, you know, in Colorado. Let's use Colorado as an example. So all the 49 states can never sue Colorado for jack shit. Nothing that Colorado does, none of the citizens of the 49 states can sue Colorado for that, and vice versa. So it makes sense for, you know, for the foreign state, doesn't make sense for the citizens of this country to not be able to sue, you know, a state that has injured them. So, okay, 11th Amendment is a crock of shit. The conclusion is that there are some exceptions right now. So the way that the law is written right now is that the Supreme Court has extended the 11th Amendment to mean more than what it says. It says, you know, the Supreme Court has turned the 11th Amendment to where the citizens of the states cannot sue their own state. And so it has extended it, and it said it was, you know, it was implied there was sovereignty, immunity. Alexander Hamilton in one of the Federalist Papers, 81, mentioned he was for sovereignty, immunity. Madison and the Virginia conventions, they said some shit too. So, you know, oh no, I found something there for sovereignty, immunity, so therefore that's what they meant. I'm sure you're going to find founders that are for it and founders that were against sovereignty, immunity. They didn't put sovereign immunity, state sovereign immunity, into the Constitution. They didn't put state sovereign immunity into the 11th Amendment. If that's what they meant, then that's what they should have offered to the people. I mean, how tricky is that, to offer to the people this, you know, wordy thing when all you meant was state sovereign immunity? You should say that. Do the states have state sovereign immunity? The people have not weighed in on that. So that amendment, by extending the power of that amendment, that's just the state, a bunch of statists, the judicial branch helping the executive and legislative branch essentially get immunity, to get complete cover. No matter what they do, they're above reproach. They can do no wrong, so they can never ever be sued by any of the citizens of other states. The exceptions, so that's the law of the land, right? That's the law of the land. So they've interpreted the 11th Amendment to give state sovereignty. They've even said, well, not even the 11th Amendment, just look at the original way that the Constitution was written. If you read it, it specifically says that the judicial branch has the power to resolve disputes between the states and the people and the citizens and the citizens and the people and the citizens amongst the citizens. They take all the power. And so, yes, the federal government definitely thought that they could take government. The original Constitution says that the federal court can resolve disputes between citizens and the states. So definitely they did not believe that they were completely, you know, that they had state sovereign immunity. If they did, why did they give the judicial branch all that power? And so, yeah, I think the Constitution actually says the exact opposite. And I think the 11th Amendment says the exact opposite of how they're interpreting this shit. The Article 2, Article 3, Article 3, Section 2, that's the power of the judicial branch. And so that specifically says, right, that the citizens can sue other states. That's why the amendment needs to be passed. But for them to say, well, not only does the 11th Amendment say that we have sovereign immunity for states, but so does the Constitution itself. No, it didn't. That's why you passed the 11th Amendment, so you can... Anyways. There's several ways. Okay, so a road worker runs over my grandmother's legs. How am I going to, sue Colorado? Colorado State employed the road worker. The road worker was drunk, almost kills my grandmother. She's in the hospital with broken legs. She may live or die. We don't know. She's got a feeding tube. In a week, they said they may have to ask us to pull the plug on her. So we got a road worker that killed my grandmother, employed by the state of Colorado, but because of how the Supreme Court is misinterpreting the Constitution and the 11th Amendment, they're saying I can't sue the state of Colorado. So who the fuck do I sue? Well, I guess I could sue the road worker. I could take, his personal wealth, like it is just totally his fault. He was drunk. He should be responsible. I could also sue the state subdivisions. So I could sue counties. I could sue cities. I could sue villages. I can't sue the state itself, but I can, sue some of the little tiny pieces of the state. That's okay. That's fine. I could get Colorado to consent to a lawsuit if I just say, pretty please, right? Perhaps the Attorney General of Colorado might be, you know what? I want to solve this constitutional issue. Go ahead. Let's, go ahead and sue me. Most people don't, consent to lawsuits. And so, a state can always consent to a lawsuit being brought against it in federal court, right? Congress can pass an unmistakably clear law. So if they have an unmistakably clear law, that's like one of the exceptions. We mean to break the state's immunity with this law. A federal court can order, so you can get to help my grandmother out, pass this law of Congress that says that, you can, if, there's physical injury, you could pass. So that'll take a long time. Federal court can order state officials in their own name to comply with federal law. So that's something I could do. Sue the state officials, sue his boss, sue the road department, the chief of the road department, sue the cabinet, sue the, attorney general and the vice governor and who the fuck else ever is up there in Denver, taking our taxes just so they can wipe their asses on it and jerk off on it and just, a bunch of juices. And are they even spending it on anything that helps us? So get Attorney General of the state or federal government to take your case. So that's another thing. Even their citizens can't sue the states. States and federal governments can sue the states. And so that means if you could get the Attorney General of another state or the Attorney General of the federal government to take, your case, if you're like a celebrity, if it's a important constitutional issue that needs to be figured out, then perhaps an Attorney General might jump up on this. On the Chisholm case, you had an Attorney General who went ahead and defended Chisholm. So the Attorney General can pick up cases. There's other specific exemptions for federal laws. There was the Superfund exemption, the bankruptcy exemption, the 14th Amendment exemption, the federal court's removal jurisdiction exemption, and then there was also the American with Disabilities Act. So there was a court case where the Americans with Disability Act, Martin v. Voinovich, 1993, Martin v. Voinovich, the High Court ordered the governor of Ohio to construct housing for handicapped people to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So therefore, the federal government could not sue the state of Ohio. They just sued the governor of Ohio, and that was okay. So what's the difference? Bullshit semantics, just fucking legal jargon. And they just went, well, I think it actually is like this. This is how the powers are divided. This is very clear-cut and dry. So the Supreme Court has got this. They've been wrong when it comes to the 11th Amendment since the Vans decision. What was the Vans decision? Back in 1890. So the Supreme Court has been wrong when it comes to the 11th Amendment and state sovereign immunity for the last 130 years. So the Martin v. Voinovich, 1993, the Americans with Disabilities Act was enforced. And the way they enforced it was by suing the governor of Ohio, not the seat, not the state, but the individual, Voinovich. Martin v. Voinovich. So it's like Voinovich is just some guy that they're suing because he's, but he's actually the state. So that's another way, to sue the state officials. So with my road work, my grandmother, right, she's, dying. We have all these medical bills, and we could sue the road worker. We could probably sue the county and the city. I mean, I think you could probably put as many people on the lawsuit as possible. You sue everybody and then just, let the chips fall where they may. So sue the county, sue the city, sue the village. Sue the government officials, sue the department chief, sue the guy, the road worker itself, maybe the car company, maybe the alcohol company if he was drunk. The Congress, you could try to pass a law with Congress. That seems pretty hard. The amendment, maybe the 21st Century Bill of Rights, you might be able to slip something in on that. The federal court, you could get the state officials, get Attorney General of the state or federal government, and somehow maybe the 14th Amendment, you could somehow slip. So if I could somehow say that my rights and freedoms from the Bill of Rights were being denied, or if it had to do with bankruptcy or the Superfund or the Americans with Disabilities Act, she will be disabled, so maybe that's somehow I could tie that in to the thing. I'm not for sure. So, conclusion, overall, I'm opposed to sovereign immunity on principle. Fuck sovereign immunity. Fuck sovereign immunity on principle. The fight against tyranny was an important principle for the founders and the American Revolutionary Warrior badasses themselves. So, it's just crazy to me to think that a nation-state, this fictional social construction that has defined borders and a population has people, so it's just a big farm. But it's also, forever. The state of Colorado is going to be here forever. So the nation state, with the government, they assume a monopoly of violence. They assume all the power, right? The social construction of a nation state. South Dakota. Let's just put it on South Dakota. So South Dakota, that has meaning, right? That word has meaning. When I say South Dakota, you have the geographical area and then all the people in that, rectangle. So South Dakota has meaning. Clearly that nation state exists probably until eternity. So South Dakota is going to be here on earth after we all die. South Dakota will still carry strong, still keep going. And they get unlimited state power, unlimited violence, so they take all the power that they could possibly get while we're here on this planet, and then we're going to pretend as if they're completely immune from peaceful lawsuits. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. You give anybody immunity, that motherfucker's going to get corrupt pretty goddamn quick. Everybody can do wrong. Nobody's beyond reproach. South Dakota should be sued for the crimes that South Dakota does. It should be sued, or there should be criminal charges. Those are the only two remedies. So if you're saying that these states are immune from civil cases, then the only way that you can go after a state government is with criminal charges. And so that'll be, pretty dicey situation. So you have to get some, righteous police officers, and you have to go arrest the governor. So a state, South Dakota, let's say South Dakota kills, rapes, steals. They do major crimes to their own people. They injure one of their own citizens severely, and they need to pay that citizen restitution. Of course they do. You injured one of your citizens, pay their hospital bills, apologize. Of course that's what you should do. But a lawsuit against the state who injured their own citizens severely seems like one of several appropriate possible options for rectifying the situation until the victim is satisfied with justice. So ultimately, fuck the 11th Amendment and the SCOTUS decisions that interpret it to be sovereign immunity. Fuck sovereign immunity, fuck the 11th Amendment. The 11th Amendment is a crock of shit.